welcome to the Organic Filaments Network. If you enjoy deep conversations on art, culture, and storytelling, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. Today, we're honored to have Shahid Nadeem, one of South Asia's most celebrated playwrights. His work with Ajoka Theatre, which he co-founded with his late wife, Madhya Gohar, has reimagined history and challenged social conventions through powerful storytelling. Drawing on Brechtian techniques, Sufi traditions, Punjabi folk theatre, and a radical activist spirit, Shahid Nadeem's work, from Toba Tek Singh, Udan Hare, Third Knock, Burk Avanza, Dara Shikha, to Bulla, have become cultural landmarks. Welcome, Shahid Saab.
Thank
How are you
you.
doing?
It's a pleasure. I'm doing fine under the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope everything's well in Lahore.
Yeah, apart from pollution and power outages and political pollution, all is well otherwise. But it has
Before,
been the festival
yeah,
season
yeah.
in February. So we had the Lahore Literary
Oh, wow.
Festival, Paz Festival. Then we had one of our, in fact, our latest play, the premiere of a play called Lawrence in Lahore.
Yeah,
So it has been a busy time, and the weather is fine.
excellent. So, yeah, before we dive into your creative journey, I'd like to start with the question inspired by Brecht himself. Brecht once said, art is not a mirror to reflect reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. How do you view theater in the current circumstances, especially in terms of as a mirror reflecting society or as a hammer shaping it, or a combination of both?
Well, actually, the answer also is related to my own journey from a student political activist to playwright. And I realized that if you have to change the system, you have to change the mindset. And for that, I think stone is not as effective as pen. So I used to literally
Yeah.
throw stones at the police and at the government buildings and literally breaking mirrors or window panes. But then I thought pen will do a better job. So I think
Yeah.
I didn't want to break the mirror or just reflect the mirror. I think it is beyond the mirror what playwright is looking for. So the reality as we see it and the reality as it should be or it may be. So in that way, we in Ajoka and myself as a playwright, we keep on mixing different forms and different ways of doing theater. We are not committed to one particular school.
Absolutely. So I want to start from the beginning. You were born in Sopore, Kashmir in December 1947 and forced to migrate as a refugee in 1948. How has that early displacement shaped your artistic identity and informed the recurring themes of loss and resistance in your work?
Well, obviously, at the tender age of 1, if it had affected me, I would not be aware of it. But I'm told that when we were crossing the pedestrian bridge, rope-made bridge from Jammu to Sialkot, and my
Yeah.
mother was carrying my elder brother, sort of holding his hand and carrying me in the lap, while my father was looking after whatever luggage and they could get before hurriedly leaving the Kashmir Valley because of the threats from the pro-India forces. And then a prisoner exchange was taking place at the same time. So some
Oh, wow.
Muslim prisoners were being repatriated to Pakistani side, and one of the prisoners offered to my mother, he saw her discomfort and her problem, to carry me in the lap. While we were crossing the border of India and Pakistan, or Indian Kashmir and Pakistani Kashmir, I was carried by a prisoner and a convict.
Yeah.
And this relationship has gone on. I had been in prison. I had spent time as a inmate of prison with other convicts of all kind of crimes they were supposed to have committed. So in that way, I think the relationship which was established at that critical juncture has gone on till today. And then I
Yeah.
joined Amnesty International. I work for political prisoners all over the world. And
Mm.
very recently, I have
Yeah.
written a letter to, sorry, an article for an Italian paper focusing on prison life, about my prison experiences.
Yeah.
So my hide and seek with the prisons goes
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. In your plays like Doba Tek Singh and Udan Hare, partition is portrayed not as a closed chapter, but as an ongoing trauma. Do you think these experiences sort of, when did you first feel compelled to bring these narratives to stage? But could you describe a specific scene, perhaps, about the division or the trauma of partition? Uh,
Right. Well, I mean, my father was from Kashmir, and all his relatives they stayed back in Kashmir. Only he moved to Pakistan, and my mother was a Punjabi Kashmiri based in Lahore.
yeah,
So, having no paternal relatives with me, and we reconnected with them after a very long time, maybe 30 years or so, that obviously had an impact.
yeah,
Secondly, I was in my childhood. I was living in Batapur, which is right on the border of India and Pakistan, near Wagah. My father was the medical officer of the Bata Bata Shoe Company. And 1965 happened when I was there, and this Indian invasion, and they almost came very close to Lahore and Batapur. The canal near Batapur was, in fact, the border where they kind of were stopped. So at
mm,
that time, as a Pakistani nationalist, I used to shout slogans, "Crush India" or "Ganjang India," the Indonesian term which President Suharto, the great Indonesian leader, he had given us during those times. He was a great supporter of Pakistani side. So, but then I moved on as a student, from school to college, and then I was exposed to progressive ideas and progressive thought, and that was late is when a revolution, youth revolution, was taking place all over the world, including the West and the third world
mm,
countries. So then
yeah,
gradually my attitude towards India or towards Indians started changing. And my mentors, political mentors, played a role in that. My studies and my reading of books and getting to more of Indian history, pre-Pakistan Indian history. I think that gradually changed my mind. I became a socialist, and I think socialists are invariably for peace and for human rights. So then first I wrote a short story about the bombs, unexploded bombs in the border areas, without referring to which side they were on. Like Manto, I also didn't want to take any sides. The concept was the bombs had damaged the mother earth, and in the end, this child takes out the unexploded bomb, and the mother earth says, "Thank you, son." So gradually, then I moved on. Then I discovered Manto, and then I got involved with political and cultural activities. Writers Association called Halka Erbab-e-Zauk, joined Pakistan Television. So by that time, it had been a 360 turn, and I was now all for peace. I still, Kashmir was a stumbling block. I couldn't accept Kashmir being occupied against the will of the majority of its people. But otherwise, my approach towards India, especially northern India, Punjab, where we share so much of culture, history, language, art, um, and then the first play, I think I had some dramatic readings of Montrose short stories, overtake saying Akhri Salute and Titwal Ka Kuta. And where again, it was basically Manto who inspired us, along with writers
Mhm.
like Christian Chandra Bedi. But Manto was a great influence. And then a lot of my work became influenced by the partition trauma or the partition agenda or the baggage which we still carry. And then I think 6 or 7 of my plays exclusively deal with partition. Anni Mai the Supana is one, which is about people who were left behind during the partition and mass exodus. And then Ek Thi Nani, about two sisters who were
Mhm.
separated by partition and how they meet and how they reunite and rediscover their legacy. And then
Yeah.
Manto, the story of Manto from partition, from his migration to Pakistan till his end, which then was converted into a television serial and the film Manto. So I think partition has been a major subject for my plays and for Ajoka.
Yes. So I just had a quick question. At Punjab University, I know during that period, the psychology department was very influential. And you ended up studying psychology at Punjab University. Can you tell about how that influenced your work on a certain level, whether it gave you insight into human psychology or anything of that nature?
Yeah, I joined after graduating from Government College, Lahore. I then joined Punjab University Applied Psychology Department, and it was in the new campus. And the new campus was really new in those days. It was late 60s we are talking about.
Yeah.
And it was a
Yeah.
beautiful area, and it was not contaminated by the Jamaat-e-Islami kind of pressures and dictates. And it was more liberated. And my department, applied psychology, I think 70% were girls. And that was obviously very influential, not only in my uh, kind of getting to know the opposite gender, because in government college at that time, there were hardly any girl students. So, but also,
Yeah.
I don't know whether there is a psychological connection. I became very active socially, politically, as president of the Applied Psychology Students Association, president of the Punjab University Literary Forum, as a short story writer. And then I wrote my first play, Maria Hoya Kutta, while I was a student there. But apart from that, I got very actively involved in the movement against General Ayub Khan and General Yahya Khan while I was there. And that's when I was
Yeah.
arrested twice, first by the Ayub Khan government, then by Yahya Khan government. And this was really something which kind of gave a lot of to the anti-dictatorship movement at that time.
So during that period, you also encountered the professors group, which is sort of led by Dr. Azizuddin, uh, and you participate in the Bhakti House sort of milieu, intellectual milieu. And how were your exchanges, like intellectual exchanges? How did they shape your sort of perspective on theater and your commitment towards using theater as a means for social change?
Well, there were two mentors. One was Professor Azizuddin, the other was Dr. Azizul Haq. So,
Azizul Haq.
yeah, and then there were two organizations, left organizations. One was National Students Federation, the other one was National Students Organization,
Organization.
NSF and NSO.
Yeah.
So I was more in touch with Dr. Azizul Haq and National Students Federation, which was a nationwide left-wing students body.
Yeah.
And they used to, Professor Aziz was a teacher at the campus, but Dr. Azizul Haq was actually a scientist who was working for the PCSIR, the scientific uh, laboratory. And he
Yeah.
used to come and spend time with us in the new campus. And the new campus, as I said, was quite a liberal place at those times, and the dialogues and the interaction, it was quite free. So there I was exposed to an idea of how cultural action can be part of the socialist struggle.
Yeah.
And Dr. Azizul was remarkable in his approach towards revolution, not towards socialism. It was
Yeah.
like total change, not only in society, but in your person also, your family life, your psychological makeup, and your
Yeah.
political and cultural life. So he believed that it all should be consistent, and a socialist has to be socialist in the true sense of the word, partner, as a husband, as a son, as an activist. So
Yeah.
I was very much, he was quite a charismatic person, and I was very inspired by him and became quite active in the left students' politics. But unfortunately, he died in very tragic circumstances, very young man, but he really was at his intellectual peak, and he was really gaining popularity among the students. And very crucial time. This was when Bangladesh was created, and he was one of the few voices who were against army action in Bangladesh and totally showing
Mhm.
solidarity with the people of East Pakistan, now being called Bangladesh. So that romance
Can you
got cut off.
can you tell a little bit about how he passed away or what actually took place during that period?
Yeah, it was very strange and quite shocking. He was regarded very highly as a great teacher by everyone, including female students or female activists of our group. And one of them, Rabia, was married to an industrialist who had some, not just he
Mhm.
was an industrialist, which is malaise in itself. Also psychologically disturbed, and at some point he was kind of suppressing his frustration or his anger. And at one point, when we had returned from a political meeting in Lailpur, Faisalabad, and came back, six or seven of us, and he was waiting, and he just shot his wife and Dr. Aziz. Dr. Aziz expired, and Rabia survived, and a bullet was left in her body all her life. She recently, like 2 months ago, she passed away.
Oh,
I ended up marrying Rabia. So she was my first wife, and I had two kids from her. And she was a great comrade, and also an intellectual and person of great dignity and high moral values.
yeah.
So it was just quite unbelievable. Still, we can't believe how this thing happened. He killed himself also, the husband, Saif Khan. So only Rabia survived. And there was absolutely no reason for him to take such a drastic action.
Yeah. Yeah, and during this time, you mentioned that this was the first time you went to prison. Prison, I think, like what's unique, and this is talked about by many scholars and people who have researched your work. The site of the prison as uh, so. I know you spent time in jail under Ziaul Huq's period. Can you tell a little bit about that? What were the core political stances and ideas which led to your sentencing during that period? And then I'll come back
Well,
and
uh,
talk about it.
okay. Um, You see, when a political activist is sent to, or a student activist is sent to prison, it's a matter of pride, and there is no stigma, there's no shame. And as a young person, you are unafraid, especially if you are a part of a movement. So
Mhm.
I don't think I've been to prison 3 4 times. I don't think I've ever been. or ashamed, mostly being proud and also in a way excited at the new experiences or new challenges. So, and since you are with a group of friends, I don't think I ever, apart from the first time when I was kept in solitary for a few days, those are the experiences which can really have it all. Because if you are on your own in a prison cell, with hardly anything like one of the political leaders who have been having a great time in prison these
Yeah,
days,
yeah.
you don't have a newspaper, you don't have television, you have nothing. In the prison cell, it was a police lockup. In fact, it was
Mhm,
totally cleaned out. There was nothing there, not
mhm,
even a piece of paper. And there was the, it was, yeah, it was February, in fact. So it was quite cold. And the prison bars, I mean, the window was not shut, it was just bars. So it was open and I was shivering and I had nothing, just whatever clothes I had, a jacket and trousers, and that's all I had. So there was a toilet attached to the locker. So that was a place which was warmer. So I had spent the night there because I couldn't stay in the larger room. And I remember I saw a small piece of newspaper, just cutting or something piece. And I would not read, must be about 40, 50 lines of different news. I would not read the whole thing in one go. So I would read 3 or 4 lines, then I will give it a rest. And after 1 hour or so, I will read some other news from that piece of paper. So, apart from that, when you are with the group, even if you are with the group of so-called common criminals, the convicts, the murderers and the dacoits and whatever other crimes they may have committed, if you are in their company, then you adjust, you adapt, and you become friends with them. And to everyone's surprise, the more when you are in the company of other inmates, your own political prisoners, or even what we call the criminals or the convicts with all kind of apparently horrendous crimes they might have committed. But somehow, uh, as inmates, you become friends. Um, uh, you somehow you find a meeting ground. So I remember when we were first sent to Miawali prison, which is a kind of maximum security prison in Pakistan.
What year
Um,
was this?
it was 1978.
Okay.
1978. So it was General Ziaul's time. And we were in Kot Lakpat jail, Lahore, with Zulfikarli Bhutto as our neighbor. He was also there, and we tried to connect with him, and that was something which was totally unacceptable to the authorities. So they, as punishment, they transferred some of us to Miawali. So there, the first day when the prison barracks and cells are closed, um, then there is a ritual that the new comers are introduced. So we sat in a circle and they introduced themselves. So Sher Khan, 25 years, Muhammad Khan, death penalty, but uh, now remitted to life imprisonment. Then someone who has committed 2 murders, someone who is a dacoit, or whatever. And 25 years, 20 years, 30 years, these were the general as part of introduction, name and then the sentence. So when my turn came, I said, Shahid Nadeem, 1 year. So I said it very sheepishly because as compared to the 30-year sentence people, it was nothing. And they actually said, you are just here for a picnic and no problem. And they became so, and physically, they were quite intimidating. You know, the, especially the Miyawadi people with their mustaches and tall and quite aggressive in their posture. But they literally took us in their wing because we are young people who have never thought that we'll be spending time with these criminal convicts in Miyawali. So they took us under their wing. They protected us from the guards who were there for money or some other kind of gratification. And then I found that many of them were like wannabe artists. They were singers, they were comedians, they were dancers, and they were makeup artists because I then started writing play for the weekend in the prison barrack, and they all loved it. They loved playing female roles, and they were absolutely brilliant in finding ways of doing makeup or costumes. So I think I learned more from my 1 year spent in Miyawali prison or other prison than the 2 years I spent in Punjab University.
Yeah. And I think that that experience led to you writing, uh, if I'm correct, in the 80s, the Quittel and Bari, two plays which had been heavily discussed from your side. Firstly, for showing the experience of the prison, but also, you know, in understanding the power. Felt those plays were sort of a reflection of how society, of a larger understanding of power and resistance, I guess you could say. The prison as a sort of
Yeah.
understanding of power. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a microcosm of society, and this is how at least we believe as socialists. That and one of my friends, Raja Anwar, wrote a book called "From the Big Jail to Small Jail" when about his prison memoirs. बड़ी जेल से छोटी जेल तक. So, yes, in prison, you see things more clearly, the power dynamics, the role of the superintendent, and then the warden, and then the warders, and then the prisoners who are as lambardars, they are used as monitors or as guards by the prison authorities. The concept of forced labor, and obviously our sentence was rigorous imprisonment, but
Yeah.
also they insisted that the prisoners also keep the prison spark clean and shining, and the garden should be well taken care of. So it's a beautiful place if you look at it just as a building or as a community. Like I give you one example that when you are called by the prison superintendent, you go and stand outside the window in the open in the yard, and the superintendent office window. You're supposed to wait outside with your eyes down, and you don't know if he's sitting there or not. You don't know whether he's looking at you or not. You
Yeah.
only respond when you are spoken to. So, kind of a godly quality. Even then I realized that he can see us and we cannot see, or we cannot do anything about it. He can give orders, and then we only option we have is obey.
Yeah.
So, so I think the way we came close to each other, we were a group of 7, 8 people from Pakistan Television Trade Union. We had been arrested for occupying the television studios, television building as a protest against General Zaul Haq. So, so we, I mean, we in my group there was a cameraman, there was a news producer, there was a mechanic, there was a driver, and we, the way we bonded together and became a.
You were speaking about the comradeships and relationships that you formed.
See, there were two levels, or maybe 3 levels. First is our own comrades, the group to which I belonged, and we became uh, more friendly. We were from different class backgrounds. One was a driver, the other one was a mechanic, and then a news producer, then cameraman. Myself, I was a program producer. And we how to share food, how to cook, how to learn to cook, how to enjoy each other's company and crack jokes. We started working on a film script, which we more or less completed, but obviously never turned into a movie. And then family matters and how we became so close to each other's family, the letters from a daughter, from a wife, or from a mother, which received, everyone shared that. And then sometimes one of us go into depression and almost have breakdown. And then how we were giving comfort to that person. So that was, and we were defending ourselves also as a group if there was a threat from outside, from other prisoners or from prison guards. Then the relationship with the prison, other prisoners. And since there was one other group of political prisoners, a group of journalists who had been also sentenced because of their campaign against censorship. Otherwise, they were common prisoners from all over Pakistan, including a few prisoners from India who had been arrested on the charges of spying. Some of them had just accidentally crossed the border and that got arrested, and it happens all the time. Many of them had been there for many years, like 8 years, 10 years. The sentence was 3 months, but there was no one to process their release. So they were there. And they also became quite friendly. And one of them became a palmist and sort of all kind of assurances giving to prisoner the date of their release or the condition of their family and things like that. One was a very good singer, and Mahinder Singh from Jammu, who was also quite a master in this carpentry job. Because I was given the labor of working in the factory, making chairs and polishing tables. And he was my prison mate because he was this senior person there. And he taught me how to knit this plastic chairs. And those were the chairs which we made. They were used by the military officers to would visit and witness the implementation of flogging sentences or just hold some kind of investigation. So it was quite ironic that they were using the chairs which we were making. But anyway,
Yeah.
the relationship with the prison, other prisoners, those who have absolutely very, very different lives and different backgrounds and different personalities. And normally one would just hide from them and be petrified if you look at their. I think the prison world, of course, a microcosm of the society in general, especially an oppressive, unjust society which we are living in here in Pakistan. So it is very well structured and very clearly visible how the power dynamics work and who calls a shot and how people are exploited and they're bribed and they are intimidated and punished. So, one important thing which I want to mention is that in prison, letters make a big difference. Any letter from your family and from your friends or from your supporters in the outside world, outside Pakistan. So, there was a person called Kishore Lal who was charged, and I think which was the truth also, that he was an Indian spy. And he had been in prison for nearly 10 years. And he was working in the office of the superintendent because he knew how to type. He was well versed in English. And for the superintendent, it was immaterial whether he was a spy or whether he was an Indian convict. But it was very convenient for him that he would type letters and respond to letters on his behalf. So one day, Kishore Lal passed by my cell, and like a trained spy, he threw a piece of paper and without anyone noticing. And when I read that paper, it was penciled copy of a letter written by a group in San Antonio, Texas, an Amnesty International group who were campaigning for my release, and it was addressed to me that we are aware of your circumstances and hold strong, and we are campaigning and we have written to the government and this and that. So there was no possibility of photocopying. So Kishore Lal copied the letter because the prison authorities were not passing on the letter to me because they knew that I get the letter, then I will become more defiant and more confident that the world outside is caring for me. So I am grateful to that spy Shorlal for showing me this kind of favor. Then this letter was read by my friends, and we were all very excited that a group in America in San Antonio is campaigning for our release. And this has, by the way, nothing to do with the letter writing done by our political prisoner, the famous political prisoner in Pakistan, in Adiala jail. He is also writing letters these days, but he is not receiving letters. But we received this letter, and somehow, not only my attitude changed, it gave me more confidence that the world outside is aware of us and we are not totally forgotten. But the attitude of the authorities also changed. They realize that I must be someone important, that the outside world is campaigning for my release. So I got a little bit of relief, and then superintendent, where it is a very, very special favor. If the superintendent calls you in his office, you're supposed to stand outside the window and wait till the superintendent feels that he should address you. So I was invited for a cup of tea by the super, and he explained that how difficult the job of a prison superintendent is, and political prisoners, obviously they don't want to mistreat them, but this is what they are ordered to do. So that letter made me, I first learned about the term prisoner of conscience through that letter. Then when I got released from the prison, and then I had to leave the country and came to UK. Then I found out about Amnesty International, and interestingly, they had advertised for the job of a campaign coordinator, and I applied for that job, and then I got that job. And then I stayed with Amnesty for nearly over 8 years, campaigning for political prisoners all over the world, especially what we call target sector, the professionals, journalists, trade unionists, women, parliamentarians. So I used to organize campaigns at an international level and at the UN. So this my relationship with prisoners, that's how it continued.
During this period, we see during the Ziaul Haq regime, especially the dictatorship, a lot of people have to go into exile during that period. And in London, we have a lot of famous poets like Habib Jalib, who was there, other dissident voices, and
Yeah.
you end up meeting your wife, your late wife, Medea Gohar, and you continue the struggle through theater. Can you tell a bit about that period in terms of meeting Medea Gohar and the environment in London at that time?
Yeah. It was a very interesting period in Pakistan, and also consequently in UK, the Pakistani community, exile community, or British Pakistanis in UK. There were people like Faiz Ahmad Faiz and Ahmad Faraz. Then there were political People's Party prisoners there. Murtaza Bhutto and Shah Nawaz Bhutto also were there for some time. Benazir Bhutto. Then also when she was released, she came to UK. So I actually immediately when I reached London, I became actively involved in campaign against the dictatorship of General Ziaul Haq. So we formed a committee which was headed by Justice Safdar Shah. He was the president, who was the Supreme Court judge who decided in favor of Bhutto, and he had to leave through Afghanistan for his life, and he came to UK. Justice Safdar Shah. So, and I was the general secretary. It was called Committee for Revival of Democracy, and we held meetings and demonstrations and sent letters. So that was one thing which I was doing for Pakistan, because in amnesty I couldn't campaign for Pakistan. There were rules that own country rules, that you don't work on your own country because then your credibility is affected.
Mhm.
But I was doing it privately, and as an amnesty coordinator, I was working for prisoners in other countries. And during that period, I also was keeping in touch with Pakistan by writing for the Herald and then the Newsline, Muslim, these various newspapers. And then in Herald, I read a story about Ajoka Theatre performance and headed by Madiha Gauhar. And interestingly, Ajoka Theatre, the name Ajoka was coined by me about like 7, 8 years before Madiha formed the group. We established a group. It was in early 70s, but then it couldn't take off. We got involved in so many. I joined PTV, then Salman Pirzada, Usman Pirzada. Itazaz Hassan was supposed to write the constitution. The
For
group
Ajoka.
name, Ajoka means card, contemporary. This is a Punjabi colloquial word. So Madhya had heard of this name. So when she decided to set up a theatre group during the times of Ziaul Haq in 1984, she decided to choose Ajoka. And she didn't know me as such, but she had seen my first play, which I wrote as a university student, and it was first performed in Kinnaird College, Lahore, where she saw the play and she remembered it had an impact on her. So, something like over 10 years later, she met me in London. She was there for her higher studies, I think, doing her master's in theatre. And I was there as an exile and as an amnesty official. And we met, and she said that, "Aren't you the one who wrote that play?" I said, "Yes." So she said, "Why didn't you carry on writing?" So I said, "I wrote a few plays, but you need a theater group to perform, because stage play or theater play is incomplete unless it is performed, unless it has audience as a part of the whole experience." She said, "Now we have Ajoka and we need original scripts. So why don't you write for us?" So then I started writing for Ajoka from London. And the first play I wrote was Acquittal Bari, which was not only performed, I think, on the International Women's Day, 8 March 1987, and it had a tremendous impact. It related to the Islamic laws, so-called Islamic hudud laws by General Ziaul Haq, anti-women, anti-minorities, and then it generated a lot of debate. So then my journey as a playwright resumed.
And I think that was, at the time, it was a groundbreaking way of doing theater, right? That play, for me, you've always said that the women's movement has to be the center of any class struggle. And I think that, can you elaborate like about the significance of that play in terms of the women's movement and what inspired you to go in that direction? Because I think like I think compared to other people I've spoken with from the left and other movements, like your understanding around the women's movement as being a central like a peg for change and class struggle is very important, I think.
Yeah, I think firstly, women obviously are more or at least 50% of your society, and they have to have their rights, they have to be free, and they have to contribute to the well-being of the progress of the society. And in that way, also it is liberating for men also if they are sensitive and aware and supportive of the women's movement. It actually is liberating for men as well. And symbolically, if women are free and women are fighting for their rights, then it also gives inspiration to other vulnerable or oppressed sections of society, like religious or ethnic minorities, or young people, or people from working classes. So in that way, I think women movement is a central struggle for the rights of everyone, people from all genders and all classes. Now in Pakistan, it had become more significant because the general and the right wing supporters of General Ziaul Haq, they wanted to suppress women, prevent them from exercising their rights, and under the pretext of Islam or traditional values and customs and all that. This, for them also, it was most important target to establish and strengthen their control. So that's why women came out, and they then were also badly treated and sent to prison, including Madiha and some other activists like Bushra Itazaz, Asma Jahangir, Hina Jilani, Faryal Gauhar, etc. And personally, I thought that the struggle and the discrimination against women is symbolic of whatever is happening all over Pakistan in the society. So if I write for strong about a strong character or a strong story dealing with women, then actually I'm contributing to the broad struggle for rights of people in Pakistan.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense because we see that throughout Ajoka's work. Your play, Third Knock, it employs recurring knocks as a metaphor of oppression under successive military regimes. Could you elaborate about the Brechtian influence within that, where you're challenging the audience a little bit, in terms and what is the symbolic significance of the knocks within the play?
Right. Well, I wrote it as a student of Punjab University. I was quite young and I had no idea what Brecht stood for. And it was just my own personal observations of living in the old city of Lahore, and the buildings and the refugees and the communities interacting with each other, and the misery of people who had nowhere to no shelter and no support, and the states or the vested interest trying to just eliminate and remove these people and build hotels and new buildings. Even in those times, I'm talking about early 70s. So when I wrote this play, I was still very actively involved in students' politics also.
Mhm.
So the knocks also meant knocks of the military. So the first knock was General Ayub Khan. The second knock was General Yahya Khan. And I could see that there's bound to be a third knock. The play ends with the third knock. And then there was a relief of a few years of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's regime. But otherwise, soon there was General Ziaul Haq and then General Musharraf, and it goes on. So
Yeah.
at one level, it was the knocks of the generals, but at a more local level in the story, it is a small housing. Like in urban slum, and their people are being forced out, and this has happened all over the world and still happening. I mean, you can look at Gaza and it can remind you of the Pakistan building in the third knock. But there, although I was rather young and not very much like articulate in like ideological formulations, but somehow I felt that killing, like I had seen that we were shouting slogans of Ayub Khan Murdabad and death to Ayub Khan, or Ayub Khan is a dog, Ayub Kutta Hai Hai, which actually Ayub Khan in his resignation speech, he referred to such slogans. He was so offended.
Yeah, yeah.
So I realized that if you kill or eliminate or defeat one individual, one personification of oppression, then it is not going to solve unless the system is changed. So the system has to be changed through a revolution and not the individuals who represent that. So I saw one Seth, he comes and they kill him and think that now we are free. And then another Seth comes and they kill him once again and think they are free. And this cycle goes on. And last year we performed this play again as a part of our 40th anniversary, and people were asking the same question, and they were counting the knocks, and the knocks obviously keep on increasing.
And so I just wanted to also mention that many of your plays, including Burka Venza, have faced state censorship. And what creative strategies did you guys use to continue to express those radical ideals in such constraint, and maintain your artistic vision?
Well, you see, theater is a very interesting medium or form of art, because here you have various options. You can always change, you can always convey something through gestures or through music or through humor. And it's a live medium. So, in
Mhm.
one performance, if you know that the authorities have come to know and they're sitting in the audience so that they can ban the play, you can always change, make few changes, and they somehow will not really be able to pin you down. So for theater, flexibility in theater is important. Secondly, it requires very little resources. If you don't have resources, you can still do theater. You have got your bodies, you have got your voice, and you have got God's earth. So you go to a yard, go to a factory yard, go to a lawn, go to a village square, and you can still perform. Although, I mean, obviously the artistic quality may be affected a little, but still, they can't totally ban theater. So that is, I think, one thing which has been very exciting. And we have found ways of managing to continue our work. So, yes, Burka Vaganza got some bad reaction from the right wing political parties and some right wing people in the parliament, and they then exploited and exaggerated it. But otherwise, we know, like if you are aware of the game of kabaddi, like kabaddi players, when you put oil on your body, and your art is how to not to be get caught, to be as slippery as possible and run away and cross the line. So we have so many stories in which we have in a way deceived the censor authorities or bypass them or somehow negotiated so that we can carry on performing without compromising on our principle and our own stories. And there we find two techniques which are very helpful. One is humor and the other is music. So sometimes things which you can't say through dialogues and through more straightforward statements, you can do it through theater or through music and dance and gestures. That is the beauty of theater, which is not available for filmmakers or other art forms.
You and your late wife, Medea Gohar, were not only life partners, but were also creative collaborators. How did your love and shared vision shape the direction of Ajoka?
Well, as I sometimes say, as I told you, that I conceived or concocted the word Ajoka and felt very excited about it, but I couldn't then carry on because I had to find a job to survive, and in Pakistan television, then I didn't have time for this. So sometimes, and then Madiha, many years later, then she decided and she formed a group, and the time was right. So I sometimes say that I conceived Joka and Madiha delivered it. I think it was, you can say, destiny that this word Ajoka, this concept of Ajoka somehow brought us closer, and we both were passionate about it. And I, as a playwright, and Madiha as a director. And Madiha was totally sort of, she gave her whole life, even her own health was secondary. And that resulted in her in her demise at such an early age, because she was more involved in her work for the group and her responsibility as a leader and of the group, and as a director. We for us physically also, if you
How do you sort of look at her abilities as a director, her legacy as a director, I guess you could say, like when you think about other directors that you've worked with and those things?
Well, she was the only of her kind, in at least in Pakistan. She was equally keen on making theater which has substance, which has content, which has purpose, meaningful stories. And at the same time, she enjoyed the beauty of theater, how to beautify, how work on the costumes or on the set, and the music and dance and culture, especially borrowing from our own folk culture, and also the new techniques from West, where she had studied theater, and then India, which she was very closely involved with Indian theater movement. So I think she was a mixture of solid content and beautifully presented play, and at the same time linking it with our own cultural tradition. So, like, she insisted, although her Punjabi was initially quite limited, because her father was Farsi speaking Pathan, her mother was Gujarati speaking South African. But she insisted that, because she realized that if we have to perform in Punjab, we should be using Punjabi as a major language of expression. So she learned Punjabi, and she directed in Punjabi language, and using Punjabi Sufi performing arts techniques, and our own folk culture, and the passion which she had for theater, that I think no one else has. She was very passionate and very prolific in her production.
How did her Medea passed away in 2018, leaving behind a profound legacy of fearless radical theater. How did her passing affect your creative process, and does her influence continue to guide you today, your work today?
Well, obviously, I mean, you can't replace Maria. She was such a force of nature and such a strong influence. So it was definitely, it has affected us. But we still, the firstly, she has not gone anywhere. She is still with us. We still keep performing her plays, and she is credited as the director. So in the theater world and for the theater audience, Madiha as a director, like only a few weeks ago, we performed Bulla, which she had directed, and before that, Bala King, which she had directed. So in that way, she is still there. Secondly, most of our core members, senior members, they are inspired by her, and they are even now influenced. Sometimes they say that we feel as if she's there guiding us and directing us. So in that way, she is very much there. This we are our office, our team, our plays which she had directed, they are still there. And the only thing is that for me now, I have to be also active as a director, because getting playwrights or theater directors of the Ajoka kind is not easy. So
Yeah.
now I mostly I direct as well. So that has affected, and my writing also, because I can't write as much as I would like to. Because, most of my work was actually produced on prodding or insistence or somehow commands by Madiha that, look, it's 6 months and we haven't produced a new play, so you must write. Or why don't you write about this? Or why don't you write about that? So now that push is, although still I feel sometimes she is looking at me and saying that, look, 6 months and no new play. But yes, it has been a huge loss. But somehow, so far, now it's nearly 7 years. And we are still carrying on, and we are carrying on in the same direction. The times have changed, and our young people now, they are not as keen on acting as volunteer actors. And maybe it's not possible also in the present circumstances. So there are challenges. With her presence, somehow we knew that she would find a solution. She would just bulldoze or she would accept the challenges. But now that she's physically not there, maybe we have to make more effort to carry the Ajoka bandwagon rolling.
So I want to shift our focus to the latest play, Saira or Myra, which pays
Right.
tribute to Asma Jahangir. How did the idea for this play come about, and what specific experiences or landmark cases inspired you to celebrate her legacy?
Well, firstly, I would say that Asma Jahangir and Madhya Gaur were made from the same material. They were soulmates, although in different fields, but also working together. And they were very good friends. I myself was very inspired by Asma Jahangir's work. So when her daughters, they approached me and said, we want to do a play about Asma or for the first Asma Jahangir conference, which now they have every year. So I felt honored, and I thought that yes, this is the way not only to pay tribute to that great lady and a great human rights activist, but also there there is a lot of there are a lot of meaningful stories in the cases which he had handled. So
Yeah.
then we went through so many case files, and then we found two stories. One was a woman who wanted to marry on her own, will want to select a life partner, and the other one who want to reject a life partner, so-called life partner, want to try to divorce. And both were very dramatic stories. One ended tragically with the assassination, and the other one was it ended on a positive note. So then I juxtaposed and interweaved these two stories, and we had and Asma's own character and her family, her girls, they were also part of the story, and it was very well received, and is
Mhm.
now published also in my collection of plays.
How was that experience directing the play as well? Because it does, from what I'm reading about it, integrates music, dance. It has very good choreography and that sort of an amazing theatrical production.
Well, yes, follow Madiha's view of theater, in which it has to be like artistically presented and using music and dance and dramatic elements of the story, and not just presenting a certain message or certain moral of a story. But what was more dramatic and more, in a way, inspirational for me was the story of this girl who wanted to divorce her husband and her family, coming from a very well known family of Peshawar. The father was president of the Chamber of Commerce, and the mother was a doctor, and they didn't want her to divorce because it was against their values and their family honor, etc. So she then ran away and sought shelter in Asma Jahangir's shelter home, and they just
Dastak, right? Dastak,
das-
right?
Dastak. Then they wanted to, and she was totally safe, and no one was allowed to contact her from the family. But then they tried, and when Asma and Hina refused that, no, we are not going to allow you unless she agrees to. And she was totally afraid. She knew that they are not going to sort of spare her. So then the mother said that I have just come back from Hajj and I miss my daughter, and just want to hug her, just want to meet her. And somehow they were deceived, and they thought it is just the mother. And the mother meeting her daughter is not like father or an uncle or the men of the family. So that mother, a doctor,
Yeah,
from upper class Pashtun family. She came to the office of
yeah.
this Hina Jilani's office, and they insisted, the people who were protecting her, that no man will accompany. The mother will go on her own. And then when she arrived, she had they said that she had an accident and she need someone to help, so the driver is going to help her climb the stairs. And so under that pretext, the driver came, and the moment this girl's Samia, she saw the mother and came forward to hug her mother, the driver shot her point blank. She was dead. So the role of,
The, this was a very big case in the 90s.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think what stood out to me was how everybody was complicit, right? Everybody was, and this is in my own research of honor killings in Pakistan and violence against women. And there is a tendency for the whole family to be complicit in these acts of violence.
But the mother, so that thing struck me, that a mother, the archetypal image of a mother, is all love and sacrifice and affection. And mother cannot harm her child. But here is a mother, and educated mother, and well-to-do mother, and a doctor who comes, and the whole scheme she is aware of, and she facilitates in the murder of her daughter. So that image is very powerfully presented in the play, that how a mother, the force of tradition and tribal values, they are so strong that they overpower the archetypal image of a mother. So, how a mother can get her child killed just for the sake of so-called family honor or tribal honor? So that was a very dramatic and very powerful message which we wanted to convey and question, that what kind of this draconian system of values we have, that even a mother is forced to um, have her daughter killed.
So I'm gonna wrap up the interview with a couple more questions and let you go. But I've been thinking about this, the role of digital media and how it shapes audiences, right? Do you envision a future where theater sort of is able to adapt to digital platforms or those things?
Well, it is happening to some extent. Obviously, our plays are sometimes we put them online also, and we have podcasts, and we have a Joka Vision channel. And so, in that way, the digital platforms are being accessed by us. But theater is primarily a live medium where a community of audience, they come and they collectively experience a live theater presented before them by their own people, the actors. And that excitement for actors as well as for the audience, that cannot be achieved through digital media or even AI generated activities. So I think theater will always have its own unique position, but we will have to adapt and we'll have to adjust. Like now we use technology, We use video projectors and we use sound effects and special effects. So that is possible. Secondly, we now primarily promote our publicities on new place through Insta or through Facebook and digital platforms. So in that way, making use of the access to digital technology is a good thing, but it cannot be a replacement. During epidemic corona, we moved to online acting classes, online writing classes. We even had online festivals. So we did try how theater can be presented through Zoom or Facebook and through other online platforms. So that is obviously in a crisis situation, that is a possibility. But theater as such, it has been there for centuries, if not millennia, and I think it will go on.
Okay. Um, so just wrapping up, thank you, Shahid Saab. This conversation has been truly enlightening. Your journey from confronting the drama partition and reviving historical figures like Dada Shikoh, Polesha, Manto, challenging censorship and political oppression, and ultimately building a Joka theater alongside your late wife, Medea Gohar, demonstrates that storytelling is essential to understanding our past and shaping our future. To everyone watching, thank you for tuning into Organic Filaments Network. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, and subscribe to support independent discussions like this.